As a kid, I was always a fan for some reason or another of the video game adaptations or tie-ins of movies. While I know licensed games are for the most part considered to be majority bad, for me I loved watching the movies and then renting the games afterwards as a kid. Growing up, I thought it'd be fun to examine some of these counterparts a little bit more and see how the game holds up to the film itself. I figured I'd start this series off with one of my personal childhood favorites, Monsters, Inc. and its counterpart Monsters, Inc. Screen Team for the PlayStation 1. As a kid, I sunk many hours into Screen Team, even though I never got very far. I still have fond memories of playing it as a kid. As for the movie, I watched the VHS a bunch of times as a kid, and I've even seen it multiple times as an adult as well. I guess I should probably give a spoiler warning for both the movie and the game.
Quite good. Attack warning. Is it for real? Attack warning is for bloody real. Is it?
Monsters, Inc. is one of those movies I put as like a gold standard Pixar film. Coming out during the heyday when Pixar was one of the best animation studios, revolutionizing animation with their boundary-pushing 3D animation. And while yes, compared to today's standards, Monsters, Inc. definitely looks a little dated, it's still a classic animated film. The opening of the film is one of my favorites in Pixar's lineup because it presents the entire idea of the film and the world incredibly well. A film about monsters scaring kids to use their screams as a power source for the monster world, playing with that old kind of kid horror trope of a monster being under your bed or a monster in the closet. The scene builds really well, trying to emphasize the terror, but then quickly subverts that when the monster slips and falls onto the jacks. This slipstick move quickly takes any of the scary out of the monster, humanizing them and making them funny for kids in the audience, which will also be foreshadowing for the ending of the film. We then cut to our main characters Sully and Mike, and boy does Sully's fur still look great to this day. All the furry critters in this one actually look pretty great. The duo is the star team of Monsters, Inc. pushing for the scare record, Mike being voiced by Billy Crystal and Sully by John Goodman is casting to a perfection as they fit these characters to a T. On the scare line, doors are brought in which leads into a child's bedroom. From there, the monsters do their spoopins to fill up scare tanks, which is converted into power. As Sully is pushing for the record, Randall, played amazingly by Steve Buscemi, is close second on the leaderboard, even taking the lead for a second. The monsters are led to believe that kids are toxic and can kill them. When one comes out with a sock on their back, the famous code 2319 is called and the CDA quickly comes in force to clean up the situation. One night when Mike is going to take Cecilia out on a date, Sully goes back to help Mike with his paperwork so he can go on the date. However, when Sully goes back to the line, he notices a lone door. Upon opening the door, he doesn't notice anything until he realizes a child has gotten into the factory. When Sully brings the child to Harryhausen's, where Mike is on his date with Cecilia, she runs amok, leading to an all-out city panic. They escape back to Sully's apartment where Mikey goes all Mikey, making the child laugh, which causes a power surge. Really, the way the film hints with foreshadowing is done really well. It's obvious without kind of hitting you in the face. One of my favorite scenes in the film is where they're interviewing these monsters for the newscast.
Well, a kid flew right over me and blasted a car with its laser vision.
I swear I've seen that guy in the news before. The next day, they head back to Monsters, Inc. with the child disguised as a monster to try and send her back through her door. However, Monsters, Inc. is crawling with CDA agents. Sully and Mike overhear Randall and Fungus talking about how they're the ones who brought the door down and have been working without people knowing. Mike attempts to put Boo back on a random door when Sully reveals that he's named the child Boo because she likes to scare people. It's kind of this whole idea that kids are afraid of monsters, but in reality the monsters are afraid of the children. Randall finds out that Mike is involved with the child, so Randall threatens Mike for the child. When Mikey attempts to return the child, Sully doesn't trust Randall. To prove his point that it's okay, Mikey goes into Boo's door where he is quickly put into a box by Randall thinking it's Boo. Sully follows Randall to discover Randall and Fungus are building a machine to give everybody plump lips. Sully saves Mike from the machine and then they go looking for Mr. Waternoose where Sully is forced into a scare demonstration. This terrifies Boo. When Sully sees himself on the playback and how Boo is reacting to him, he realizes that what they've been doing is wrong. Boo trips running away in fear from Sully revealing herself as the child. Mr. Waternoose sees it's the kid as Mikey is trying to explain everything to him. Waternoose quickly turns on Mike and Sully with Randall by his side as they banish them into the Arctic where they meet the abominable snowman. Mike and Sully get into an argument as Sully wants to return to try to save Boo, and Sully ventures off into his own, entering a random door in a nearby village to try to get back to the factory. Sully returns in time to save Boo from a kiss of a Dementor when Mikey returns as Sully is fighting Randall. The two run from Randall and they go on the door rail lines, and honestly to this day this is some impressive animation with just how many moving pieces there are. Using Boo's laugh to power all the doors, they begin hopping through the doors trying to make their way to Boo's door. Randall gets the upper hand, but Boo helps save Sully when she faces her fears of him. They shove Randall into Pizza Planet's door, breaking it into 1,000 pieces. But Randall could return through another door if he's not lizard jerky already. We already saw this with Sully returning from the Arctic. Waternoose returns the door where Mikey causes a distraction as Sully and Boo makes a break for it. Waternoose sees them and begins to chase after them. When Waternoose catches up to them, he begins threatening them, saying a lot of things that you probably shouldn't say out loud, and of course the entire audience of CDA agents heard everything he's saying and it was all caught on camera. Waternoose is pulled away as CDA number 1 comes in and lets them return Boo back to her door, and then they have to shred it.
That's the way it has to be.
The future of Monster Inc. now makes kids laugh instead of scaring them, because laughter is 10 times more powerful than screams. So now Mikey goes into the room instead of Sully, because he's around running the business. At the end of the day, Mike takes Sully for a surprise, showing him that Mike has painstakingly put Boo's door back together from the shredded pieces of wood. Sully enters.
Ooh. Kitty.
And that's the end. Now with the Monsters Inc. game tie-in, there's technically 2. Monsters Inc. and Monsters Inc. Scream Team. For me, Scream Team is the game of choice. I've never played the other one, but I wanted to pick Scream Team for this video because this was a game I played a lot as a kid, even though I never made it very far, but it was always a game that stuck out to me as fun at the time. Of course, I traded it off years ago, but with adult monies I was able to rebuy it and play back through it, finally beating it this time. Scream Team follows Mike and Sully as they begin their training at Monsters Incorporated. You start the game off with a quick tutorial as Roz guides you through the game, how to jump, attack, butt slam, and what you need to collect and how to scare. In the levels, you'll be collecting coins, ooze, and scaring robots to earn bronze, silver, and gold medals over 3 different worlds containing 4 levels each. To move on to the next world, you need to collect all bronze medals in the 4 levels of the world. After you collect the 4 medals, you'll be challenging Randall to a race. If you collect enough coins and beat Randall, you'll unlock the next world and unlock a special ability for the previous world to help unlock the silver and gold medals. For each level, you can play as either Mike or Sully.
We get through this, you and I could be the best screen-producing team Monstropolis has ever seen.
Wait a minute, that's not John Goodman.
Oh, we're not on the list. We are not on the list, Sully.
Hey, that's not Billy Crystal. Quick little editing thing. I just noticed while I was cutting this that the worker at the desk when you come to a Scream Team is actually the one who does the opening test where the monster slips and falls on the jacks. So I'm assuming she moved positions, maybe promotion. Just thought I'd throw that out there. I just saw it. Both Mike and Sully play pretty similar. Sully being a bit slower and Mike maybe a bit faster. Maybe that's just a placebo effect. But the main differences is really like the ground pound, where Mike is really bouncy and Sully just kind of slams down. Both also have different scare animations, but otherwise they're pretty much the same. For me, I just played every other level as either Mike or Sully. I just bounced back and forth between the two. To collect the bronze medals, you'll need to scare 5 robots, but in order to do so, you need to collect ooze. You need to fill up your ooze gauge to be able to scare different color robots. Different color ooze containers will give you more of a boost to help fill your gauge. To get the silver medal, you need to collect all the coins in the level. Some of the coins will be impossible to get to until you unlock the world's special ability after getting the bronze and beating Randall. To unlock the gold medal, you need to get the bronze and silver medals in each level. To unlock the final robot kid, you need to scare to earn a gold medal. To scare the kid, however, you need a full scare gauge to scare it. After you get the medals, you'll get an FMV of the actual movie. Ah yes, 240p compressed clips, the director's intended way to watch the film. It's actually really weird because the story of the game is about being trained to work for Monsters Inc. and then you get these abrupt clips from the movie that has nothing to do with the story of the game because they haven't even happened yet. Still though, to see the full story and all the FMV clips, you need to 100% the game. You do not get the real ending until you do. Don't worry though, it's very easy. And even for me, yes me, the one who always takes the easy route, 100% of this game in just a little over 3 hours. If you're used to games like Spyro, then you pretty much know how to go about a game like this one. Pretty much plop down into a world and start collecting your tasks. There's not really much danger other than falling off the map or into water. Sure, there are some enemies that can damage you, but they don't take much health when they hit you and they're easy to kill. If you end up running low on health, you can just swat a trash can that usually gives you a bag of chips, chips being this game's meds, and you can normally find them laying around the map. They're pretty easy to find. Going through the levels is fairly easy, as most levels are pretty simple when it comes to their layouts. Some levels, like downtown, there's multiple layouts such as the sewer, the main city, and the store's back room, but it's all pretty simple and easy to find your way around the map without actually having a compass or a map indicator. The worst level in the game though by far is Hot Springs. This is a rather confusing laid out map, as most of the map looks exactly the same. I found myself wandering around in circles just trying to find all the collectibles in this one. But as I wandered aimlessly around Hot Springs, I did get to jam to some amazing music. Much like the film, the game has a great jazzy soundtrack that fills in each environment. Even if most tracks are relatively similar, it's a pretty slapping score. After a while though, one thing that I did find tiring was the scare elements of the game. Pretty much Mike and Sully have a very limited amount of scare animations, and the scaring actually takes a little bit of time to run through its quick time event. After seeing these animations over and over and over again, it became one of the most boring parts of the game for me and felt more like a chore than anything else. Still, overall, this is a fun little game that holds up rather well from memory. So how does the game compare to the film? Okay-ish. I mean, in terms of the story, the film is way better here. The game isn't really the same story. I mean, it has the clips from the film, but you know. However, the game is a lot of fun and not a bad quick play. Sure, there's not a lot to do afterwards, and you can 100 this game in only a few hours, but it's still a pretty good time as you do it. To me, the film is always going to be a Pixar classic and an animated must-watch. The game is kind of more one of those things, if you can find it cheap or maybe already have a copy of it, give it a revisit or give it a shot. With this series, I think I'm going to do something kind of different for a rating system, breaking it down into a few kind of ratings. Watch it, which means I'd pretty much only recommend the film and skip the game. Play it, which means I'd pretty much recommend only playing the game and skip the movie. Skip, which means I would recommend just skipping the game and the movie. And watch and play, which means I would recommend both watching the movie and playing the game. As for Monsters Inc. and Monsters Inc. Scream Team, I'd give it a watch and play. The movie is great to me, and I think probably most everybody's seen it at this point, and the game's a fun little jaunt that I would definitely recommend checking out. I wouldn't go out of my way to find a copy of this game or secure myself a copy of this game to play it, but if it's relatively easy for you to get a hold of, or maybe you already have it in a dusty closet somewhere, give it a shot. Thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, be sure to give a thumbs up and subscribe. It goes a long way in helping the channel out. Maybe share the video, whatever. It's free, helps the channel out. If you'd like to watch me play through Monsters Inc. Scream Team, it's on my gaming channel. There will be a link in the description down below. If you'd ever like to watch me play any video games live, there's a link to my Twitch below. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Peace. Boom.